Hey guys, this is Red and Blue, your channel on YouTube for all things PSG in English. Please subscribe. Today, there's a topic. You must have seen it, which is making the rounds, creating a lot of controversy. And I think it's time to talk about it. Is the rift and the growing clash between PSG and its goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma. Big topic, and yes, things seem to be escalating, and have gone into a place where the club and the player are like essentially shooting at each other. So let's take a step back is what I want to do. I think there's 4 points to discuss to kind of go through the whole arc of Donnarumma and extension and Chevalier and so on. So let's go through it and just talk through each one of them. So the first thing to talk about is the contract extension. This is the start of it all. Donnarumma's contract is ending at the end of this season. And so it's a must for the club and the player to agree on an extension. Otherwise, he can leave on a free at the end of the season and he can start negotiating with other teams in January. And obviously, it's a situation that we've been through with Mbappe recently, which is highly uncomfortable and which we absolutely do not want to live through again. And it is the way of football. Sadly, it's a business. A player is an asset as well as being a player. And so we can't put ourselves in a situation where the player might have a chance to leave on a free. Luckily enough, the club and the player have been talking about an extension for nearly a year at this point. Conversation has been going on for a long time. And one of the key stumbling blocks is that the policy of PSG when it comes to wages and when it comes to contract has changed. Since the last time Donnarumma signed a contract with us, back then he had a very high salary because he joined us on a free already from AC Milan. And so he had a big contract with a big bonus and a big sign-on fee. And it is football, it is life. The guy went into it saying that he should have a raise after 4 years at the club, and he's a young goalkeeper as well. So fair point to him, and okay with that. The negotiations though got to a place where what the club was offering is saying, hey, the new way of doing contract is that you're going to have a smaller flat salary and a bigger bonus part, which is tied to your performance and the number of games that you play. And essentially, if you play all season, then you get to the same level of salaries that you currently have, which is a big salary to begin with and one of the top salaries in the world for a goalkeeper. The player was saying, look, no, I want the same salary that I've got now as a flat. And then if you want to do the bonuses, let's have them come on top. And that's my wage increase that I've been asking for. So that was the dilemma. In February of this year, the club and the player agreed on the proposal that PSG had given him, so with a lower flat salary and bonuses to stay at the same level. And then once the player started performing in the Champions League, he came back to it and said, whoa, let's not sign, let's not announce just yet. Let's see where this thing go. And it could put me in a better situation to negotiate my contract. Fast forward 6 months, and we come to the last few weeks, where there's still not a deal in place. And, there comes a point where it's just like a decision needs to be made. And at this point, the club and the player have had numerous conversations during the season, after the final of the Champions League, during the Club World Cup, after the Club World Cup, and then most recently last week. And they came to a place of, look, like there's not a deal in place, so it is it. And you can put blame on both sides at this point. I think Donnarumma left on a free from AC Milan, so obviously it's not his first time going through this same process. PSG wasn't prepared to offer him a higher salary and played hardball with him. So there's some blame there. But at the end of the day, both sides have their reason, both sides have their motivation, and this is the situation that we have. And so that brings us into the next point, which is then at this point, PSG finalizes and announces Lucas Chevalier, who's this new goalkeeper coming from PSG. And a lot of players are saying, Actually, that was PSG plan from the start. They've been talking with Chevalier since the middle of the season, which is true. And Luis Enrique never liked Gianluigi Donnarumma, wanted to choose his own goalkeeper, and so he wanted Chevalier from the start. Partially true. And I think, it's fair. Then Enrique has never been the biggest fan of Donnarumma ever. But then again, neither of PSG fans, if you remember. Up until like 6 months ago, every PSG fan was saying Gigio didn't have what it takes to be our goalkeeper and we should push him out. So he was far from being alone in that opinion as well. We did start talking to Chevalier in the middle of the season. At the same time, like what I find a bit hypocritical, apart from the fans turning their opinions around on Donnarumma, that's fair. But I think we would have been even more critical of PSG if we have been in the same situation and we realized last week that we don't have a plan B for goalkeeper. Because what happens then? We go back and overpay massively on some other like not as good goalkeeper to try to get him in, or like we have to cave to our player and Donnarumma and just give him the contract that he wants, even if then it puts into trouble with every negotiation that we have with our player. I mean, it's nonsense. And you can't blame the club from being prepared for every possible outcome. So whether the club went to Chevalier because the conversation with Donnarumma wasn't progressing, or like the conversation with Donnarumma didn't progress because the club went with Chevalier, ultimately, I don't think it makes a big difference, because either the club was being prepared for like the outcome, even if they didn't want that outcome to happen, or the club was making a decision in terms of what goalkeepers do they want, and they're perfectly entitled to it. And Luis Enrique, I think he's earned the right to decide who is the goalkeeper that he wants and what qualities and skills he wants in his goalkeeper. So I don't see how all of a sudden that's a big deal and that's a big negative. And then we move on to this week. And now, like, this is where, everyone is setting their hair on fire. Because now that Lucas Chevalier is in and we've recruited him as part of the team, PSG has decided to not include Gigio Donnarumma in the squad for the European Super Cup and not bring him to Italy with the squad. And, like, let's be honest, it's a harsh decision. Like, I'll say that up front, it's a harsh decision. We're in the European Super Cup because Gigio Donnarumma had such a fantastic last 6 months and did so well in the Champions League and saved our butt like more than once. But at the same time, like, I don't see how any other decision could have a better outcome than what we've got. So let's play what ifs for a second. So the club decides to take Donnarumma into Udine. Two things can happen at this point. Either Gianluigi Donnarumma plays the game. Let's say he plays the game, he plays a great game, and all of a sudden, like, it puts even more pressure into PSG. It puts more pressure into Chevalier, who's just starting with the club. It puts everyone in an awkward decision at a point where we've already made the decision on who's going to be the starting goalkeeper next season. So it just objectively makes things worse. Donnarumma comes to Udine, plays, and has a bad game. And at this point, we lose the competition because of it. And people turn around and go like, oh, like, there goes PSG again. They can't get their stuff together, and they can't make a decision. And why the hell did they bring him in the first place? Or second scenario, he comes to Udine and he's on the bench as a substitute for Chevalier, which is what lots of people are taking. It's crazy. Like, do you think the people who are saying like, oh, PSG is ungrateful because they don't bring Donnarumma, who got them into the Super Cup, to Udine, do you think they're going to say like, oh, PSG is so nice, they're bringing Donnarumma but having him sit on the bench? No, people are going to be even crazier. They're going to say like, oh, what even bigger disrespect. They're bringing him only for him to sit on the bench as Lucas's rival. And then what happens? Chevalier has a good game. Well, I mean, nothing's broken, nothing is won either. Chevalier has a bad game. We spend 90 minutes with a camera on Donnarumma, who's justifiably smirking on the bench, and every PSG critic out there is saying, there goes PSG again. No win there. So I don't see what would be the benefit? And at the same time, for better or for worse, Donnarumma needs to find whatever is going to be his next challenge. So is he better served doing that on the bench or on the sideline or grumping around at the club in Udine? Or is he better able to do that being left alone at home in Paris and, able to have conversations and do whatever he wants with his time? I think it's a no-brainer. Honestly, I think it's a no-brainer. So yeah. So this whole PSG is so ungrateful not to bring him to Udine. I mean, yes, I can see the optics of it, and I can see how it's a harsh decision. But I don't see how anyone, whether that's PSG, Chevalier, or Donnarumma, actually benefits from him being taken to Udine. So if someone has a different view, by all means, explain it to me. But I really don't see it. And then there's the last point, and I think this one has been really making the rounds in the Italian media, is that PSG is pushing Donnarumma out. Once again, like the whole thing starts because the player and the club cannot agree on a contract extension. So it's not pushing him out. They offered him a new contract. They offered him a deal. They offered him renewed clauses and finances and so on. And the player didn't agree with it. So, I mean, like I said earlier, I think there's reasons on both sides. There's blame on both sides. But ultimately, it's not like Donnarumma was ready to accept whatever and just like the club was the only one who was being so unrealistic because they had agreed on a deal and then he came back to it. So let's be mindful. And so like PSG is pushing him out. I mean, a little bit, but at the same time, it is a known recipe for disaster to have two starting 11 level goalkeepers competing for the spot. It never works, never has. I challenge anyone to give me an example where it's, it became the normal situation in a club. And, the last time we had it in PSG, Donnarumma was there, it was with Navas, and it was a disaster. And after 1 year, we pushed Navas out. Donnarumma was left with very little confidence. And for that particular season, it's not like we didn't really win the Champions League that year. So, and at the same time, what is the alternative? So now we brought in a new starting goalkeeper, and Donnarumma only has 1 year of his contract. Are we gonna lock him up, make him sit on the bench for 1 year? Or just sit there and be happy that he's going to be living on a free in a year, and that he's going to be grumpy the whole year and potentially making things hard for Chevalier. I mean, I don't see how PSG wins. I don't see how Chevalier wins, and I don't see how Donnarumma wins. Because for Donnarumma, even he's got a World Cup at the end of the year, and he's a captain of Italy, and so he can't really afford to stay on the bench for 1 year and not play for 1 year, and just be in a bad situation. It's much better for him actually to go somewhere else and be in the starting 11. And if he's great, which I'm sure he's going to be because he's a great player, he's great and he's great somewhere else. And that's just the way it goes. The only potential advantage for him to stay in PSG for 1 year is that he'd be able to negotiate a bigger contract at the end of the year. So it's purely financial then, which, I don't think is what he wants, and I don't think it's a good look anyway. So I don't think anyone would say that. And, going back for a second, to the Chevalier thing as well, because we said a lot of people are saying, PSG from the start, they wanted Chevalier, and now, that was always their plan, and that's why they're pushing Gigio out and so on. If that was always the plan, if that really was the plan A of PSG, then explain something to me. Explain to me, why didn't PSG bring Chevalier before the Club World Cup? If that was the plan A, explain that to me. Because if that's the goalkeepers that you want, and that's what's going to happen, that you're going to have to change goalkeeper, bring one in, push one out. literally, like, you would want to do it as early as possible in the window, and you've got a window before the Club World Cup, so you can bring Chevalier in at this point. For Donnarumma, it's even better because then he's got more time to turn around and find a new challenge. And so yeah, so like, if that was the plan A of PSG, 100% that's where they would have done it. So I don't see how you can sit there, think of this, and tell me like, oh, PSG, like from the start, they've been trying to push Gigio out and so on. Yes, true, like Luis Enrique prefers Chevalier, and I think ultimately, like, that's more the style of goalkeepers that he wants. But I don't think it's an all white or an all black kind of decision making. I think, they wanted to find a deal with Donnarumma with respect for the guy, for the players that he is, and for the important part of the squad that he is as well. They negotiated for a long, long time, tried to find a deal which was, within the bounds of the new wage policy and contract structure policy that PSG has, but would satisfy Donnarumma. They didn't find a solution. They were prepared to not be able to find a solution, and they went with their other plan. And so, yeah. So I don't know. I like, honestly, I don't know. Ultimately, I'll say it from my perspective as a supporter, and I think I speak for a lot of people that I've seen out there, is that it's tremendously sad to get to that outcome. Gigio is genuinely a good guy, and I think you can definitely see it. He's a great goalkeeper. He's had a great 6 months. Not everything has been perfect with him. He's had his moments, he's had his flaws, and I think, I don't want to forget that it's 3.5 years where we criticized a lot for 6 months where he did really well, but in the end he got there and he did help us to the Champions League and so on. Personally, I think like that's where I might piss off a few people. I don't think he's a legend of PSG. I don't think you're a legend of PSG with just 6 months at the top level. I think there's a lot of emotion, and I respect that. But I think when we look back in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, I think the team will be legendary. I think a few players within this team will be legends of the club. I don't think Gigio will fall into that second category. But we'll see, and I think only time will tell. It's impossible to say who's a legend and who's not when the player is on his way out the door, essentially. But yeah, and Donnarumma, to his credit, he just put out like a lovely letter to the fans, which really shows his love for the club, his love for the fans, his love for the city, and big respect to him for that. But yeah, like, I think it's time to separate. It's getting ugly on both sides. No one really benefits from this. No one really benefits from throwing mud at the other side. I think there's blame on both sides. I think if both sides had really wanted to find a deal, they would have found one. I think neither side was willing to compromise enough to get it done. And I think, both sides can live with the consequences of their actions. And, it's fine. It's football. Sadly, it's a business. And that's the way it goes. But for now, let's just take a chill pill, everyone. Let's get onto the field. Let's win that European Super Cup, and we can move on to something else. And hopefully Chevalier has a great start there as well. All right, guys, that's what I had for you guys today on this Donnarumma clash. I've been trying to find clever puns with it, but not coming out with much. But yeah, like, let me know what you think in the comment. What's your opinion on the situation? I've been trying to be pretty balanced, but at the same time, like, I want to call out because I think there's a lot of hypocrisy and opinions getting shouted on both sides. So just want to be on the lookout for that. Please leave a like to this video if you think I did a good job. Leave a comment with your opinion, and please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get notified when new videos comes out. And let's get ready to win the European Super Cup. And don't forget, ici c'est Paris!